Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am making a monochrome missue card using browns and all items from my favorite things. So I am using today the Missing You Every Single Day, Love Speech Bubbles and Carpool from my favorite things, and I'm also using the Hello Bluebird Charlie Alpha die. First of all, I am stamping out my images onto Strathmore Bristol Smooth using antique linen because I am going to do some no-line coloring. For this card, I decided that I wanted to have my critters to have some black noses and eyes, and I already drew them in before I started watercoloring just to have the advantage of seeing where I stamped everything much easier. It's not that when you paint it's necessarily gone, but sometimes it's not that easy to see anymore. So just doing it ahead, and before doing the watercoloring I'm making sure that this is dry so that I cannot get bleeding of this black micron. So I'm using all kinds of browns. I think I used all the browns that there are in the Distress Ink range. Just to have lots of variation but still being in the same monochromatic brown color. So I am going to color these critters, and actually the lovely thing about these critters is that they are fairly simple to color in. Of course the cat has those 3 stripes. If you don't like it you can paint over it. I am going to keep them visible, of course, and that's, I think, the only thing that was sort of harder to go in between all those tiny spaces. But for the rest, these critters are really doable the way I color them in. So I'm just adding my ink on the edges and then I'm dragging it towards the rest of that specific part of the image to get some blending going, to get the shadow right, to get some dimension on there. I'm also doing a bit more of painting than just the image. I don't have the dyes currently. I am going to buy them as soon as they get available. They weren't the hardest to cut out. I think I even left a little piece of my fussy cutting in this video. It was also quite doable, and I'm saying this as someone who doesn't like fussy cutting, but who learned that sometimes we need to. So yeah, if you cannot get the dyes, don't worry about it. You can do fussy cutting. I know you can. The only thing that was a bit harder in my opinion was the bunny, because of course there are some of those hairs. I don't know how you call them in English, but you know what I mean. And the ears also were a bit bigger. For the rest, all doable. So I'm making sure that for each critter I'm using another brown as the main color. And then I decided that for the ears I am going to use antique linen. So about this card, I just thought that it was the perfect time to really make some miss you cards or thinking of you cards. Actually, that's always a good idea, but I think by now there are a lot of us who haven't seen a lot of people since the whole pandemic started and we are vaccinating. So let's hope that we can see everyone soon, but to be real, I think we will be busy for a while with vaccinations. We are with a lot of people. I'm still young, they say. So yeah, I'm 23 years old currently, so I will be one of the last people who get vaccinated. And almost a year passed. It's strange because normally I was going to see for example, my godfather, and because the pandemic started I couldn't see him, and it was like 2 weeks before I would see him normally that it started. So it's It's almost been a year that I have seen him. That's so strange to realize that it has been a year almost. And we are always saying, or I think that time is going slow, definitely when you cannot see people. But if you look back, a whole year passed. I think it's just so crazy, but it's more important to keep everyone safe than to think about yourself and just do whatever you want in this situation. So I will keep myself safe, and when I get vaccinated and everything just slows down, then I hope that I will see him soon. But he's one of the people that I would really like to see, like really like to see. Also, of course, friends, but those you can like message and do FaceTime and such. So that's different. But I'm glad that I'm making some miss you cards. I hope to make more, of course, but then there are birthdays that you cannot forget about. So we need to think about that too, but I think it's time that I send some more miss you cards, or just thinking of you cards. And there are so many stamp sets that are perfect for sending some love towards someone who isn't expecting it. So I think, yeah, I need to make more. Then also doing monochromatic, because I like it from time to time, and I think you can make some really powerful cards doing monochromatic things. With the browns I had a lot of varieties to use of colors, so that was also a bit easier. And I'm going to mix it up with the glitter card Gold Dust. As you know by now, I'm getting addicted, yes, because Tonic Studios paper is just gorgeous, and the gold just jumps off your card every time you use it. So I'm really trying to find ways to use this paper. So if you get bored of it, you can always say it to me, but I am trying to get it in every card. It's not working on every card, but if I could, I would add it to every card I make. But for today's card, I think it works perfectly. So I'm onto the ears now, and then I can lay them aside to dry and start on my background. So for the background, I just took a slightly smaller panel than an A2 size, because I want the gold to be peeking from the edge as well. So I'm going to blend on this paper. I want to do some splatters as well with my distress inks, so I decided to use Strathmore Bristol Smooth. I'm lining it up with my grid, because I want to do some grounding using my purple tape to mask it off, and this way I can be sure that my grounding will be straight completely. And I'm going to do some ink blending with antique linen. Now in the end, when I ink blended the rest of this panel and removed the purple tape, I saw that the grounding was really too light. So I went over it afterwards with the residue on my brush. But just so you know, I wanted the ground to be lighter than the sky area. So now I'm blending on the rest of the panel. Of course, this is Strathmore Bristol Smooth. If you have regular inks, you have some difficulties with blending, start on this kind of paper. The ink sort of stays longer wet on top of the paper instead of soaking in like Nina. I personally prefer Nina, not for the ink blending, because I really got the hang of it by now. But it took me a while as well to get perfect blend there, but just because it soaks into the paper and you can get some really vibrant and dark ink blending on Nina, while in my opinion on Strathmore Bristol Smooth, like I'm using here, it doesn't get as dark. But you can heat set it, and I will do it a bit later on. Heat set it and then add another layer. That's perfectly an option. But yeah, it's just faster with Nina. So I also added a bit of black soot to darken up the upper part of this panel. You can barely see that it's black because I went over it with brown again and such, but just so you know. And now I'm just adding more and more brown to darken this up. I really want the rest of the car to pop off these backgrounds. And I also, when on my craft mat, I know I'm just using a baby wipe later on to get it cleaned. Normally if I do ink blending, I will use my waffle flower mat, but because I want the grounding, yeah, I just kept it like this, you know. So here I'm splattering, just using the colors that I also use for the blending. And then I will also use some water droplets on this background. And can you ever splatter too much? I don't think so. But from time to time I'm thinking to myself, are you still splattering? Like, quit. But no, you just keep going. So I'm adding more and more splatters, and now I'm dabbing off the water that I added with splatters as well, and this way the ink is sort of lifted from the panel itself, because these dressings are reactive to water, so that's how you get those lighter splotches. So that's for the ink blending. And then I saw while peeling off that my grounding was way too light, so I just heat set my panel a little bit so that I didn't have any splatters that were still wet, and then I used the residue on my brush to blend a bit more or a bit darker on the bottom. Not a lot, just a little. And then I continued on the rest. So I die cut all the Love Speech bubbles, the Carpool elements out of Strathmore again, and now I'm just ink blending. So I'm using the same brush, and I thought of doing antique linen, but then there was so much residue on my brush that this turned out darker than I intended to, but it's fine. And then these elements on the right, I really wanted it to have a darker brown color. I'm not doing any shading, I'm just making sure that all my elements are brown and that there is a variety in browns where I am adding other elements on the car so that they really stand out. And now I still need to blend the car itself. Therefore I'm using a lighter brown. And once everything has a color, I can start on the assembling of this car. So something that I really like about the Carpool is that there are some imprints where you, for example, need to add the lights of the car and the number plate and such. And for me that's something really handy. Some people really like the freedom like you have with some other dyes. But I really like everything symmetrical, so for me this is a good thing because I can be sure that the lights are perfectly placed if I follow, of course, the imprints. If you don't like it, just use a bomb folder to get rid of the lines, and that will work as well, I think. But for me this really is something great. I'm not using all the parts for this car. There is also something for the front as well, like where the motor is underneath. But yeah, I think it's cute this way, so I just leave it off. And then I can add the lights, the wheel, the mirrors on the sides, and then this car is completely finished. And then I will need my critters to go in the car. So something that I thought of when I saw the Missing You Every Single Day was truly that they would fit perfectly in the car. So that's why I immediately started on this card. But truly, the Missing You Every Single Day is such a precious little stamp. Because of the size, it's also not that expensive. So that's also really handy, and I just love the designs of these critters. They are just so cute. So time for the fussy cutting. I really am not going to show you everything because that would take ages, but showing this partially, and I think the final one as well. So I also left a longer piece on the bottom just to be sure that I could add it somewhere. I didn't know where they were going to go, so yeah. Adding the cat behind the wheel, and then I'm adding the bunny aside the cat, I think. Yes. That was the easy part, but then the dog and the bear, I was contemplating leaving one out, just not using them. It was really hard. But after fiddling for quite a while, I decided on adding the bunny on the side and then somehow tucking the bear and the dog behind them. And it really wasn't easy. So this is a typical thing where you see that I have an idea, but not exactly a specific plan. I don't know yet completely how everything is going and such, so yeah, that's my life. But I really like the process as well. If I look back to it, then I'm like, yeah, it worked out fine. But if you can plan, I'm jealous. So just so you know. Then for the love speech bubbles, I wanted them to come from all sides of this car. Some a bit lifted, some without any lifts. And then of course combining it with my gold glitter. So I die cut the love speech bubble with the gold as well. And then I also die cut you out of this gold paper using the Charlie Alpha die. It's currently the only normal sized leathers that I have, so that's why I'm using it. But of course there are so many more that are gorgeous. So I wanted to add that, and I was inspired of course by a sentiment from the stamp set saying missing you. So I wanted to heat emboss the missing, and then I'm adding you with the gold. So I'm doing some white heat embossing today for this card because there is some white on the edges of my critters because I try to do a white border. Also the gold that I have is not matching with this glitter gold, so not using that. And then of course white is always a good option in my opinion when you're heat embossing and you don't know which color. White is the way to go, except when you have a white background, of course, and you're just doing a bit of embossing without really letting it stand out, of course. But yeah, so that's my missing, and now I'm covering the complete back of my car to add it onto my panel, trying to sort of center it, and I'm trying to get it straight as well. And then I'm adding my heart bubbles, my love speech bubbles that I had with of course the glitter. And with that done, it's time to figure out the U. I was contemplating doing it straight or a bit wonky, but then there are only 3 letters, so straight it is. And as you saw me doing in the past, it's something that I learned by Laura Besson. Taking your purple tape after you line it up with your grit mat is the way to go. Then you're sure that everything is straight if you at least put it straight on your grit mat. And what I also try to do is adding my purple tape on the bottom or on the top of the letters, so that I can really make sure that if I place the purple tape using the lines on my grit mat, that also the U will be completely straight, because I still use the grit mat to guide me. And I'm adding that. I'm keeping the purple tape in place there because I don't want it to peel off while I am removing the purple tape, so that's why I just decided to keep it on there a bit longer. And I also decided on adding some more thin foam squares behind the card just to make it a bit more sturdy for mailing. Testing out whether everything is adhered properly, and now I am removing the purple tape. So that's sort of the panel. I'm also going to add some stickles, of course, later on, but that's for later. I am trimming a sliver of this gold, adding it to my card base, and then I will trim off the excess, adding some permanent Pritt adhesive roller on the back of my panel, and I can add it as well. So my final step, as I said before, is the stickles. And once that's on there, this card is completely finished. And I so adore the gold. I hope you enjoyed this video, of course. If you did, you can always give this one a thumbs up. If you have any questions, you just leave them down below in the comments. I will get back to you. I hope you have a wonderful day left, and I will be back soon with a new card. Bye!